Today we're going to talk about one of the void phases that we experience in the awakening process. So if you're interested in this, then by all means stick around. There are many different phases that we might experience during this awakening process. We can't get away from them, they just happen, and they are the prerequisite of a deeper search, a more authentic deep dive into ourselves. So 5 signs that we're in the void stage of the awakening process. So what does void mean? Void means nothingness, doesn't it? We're in that in-between stage where we're not quite full of ourselves in the best way, full of ourselves energetically rather than egotistically. We're just feeling that nothingness, that sense of separation from the world. So that's the first sign, is that we just feel absolutely nothing. And this can represent itself as one of the first dark nights of the soul. I know, going through my journey, that was my experience of it. I had a big awakening experience, a big blast of Shakti through my system, and then after that the ego came back in and I was left in this perpetual state of nothingness. I didn't really feel anything and life was almost back to normal, but perhaps worse than before. I never lost the knowledge that I received from the awakening. That never left me. It's always stayed in me in some slight way, but then the journey after that is to uncover that feeling of who we are again. And that's why the first sign is so important, that feeling of nothingness, because that leads to here's the second sign, a deep sense of frustration. Almost can be like, I've lost that experience, or I've lost the feeling that I felt, that freedom feeling that I experienced. I've now lost it and I'm now back into the mire of the mind. So this frustration is there, but this is the greatest gift. We may not feel it, but it's the greatest gift because it leads to an authentic search. Almost like there's a want or a desire to go deeper. Because let's be honest, this is probably the part where people abscond from the journey. They just up and leave, but they will come back. They'll have to, because pain will force them to relook at this area of their life, and thank God it does. And this is an ever-continuing process. I know that in my life, as soon as I get rid of one layer of the onion, it seems to be that another layer comes to the surface. And it keeps things interesting, but this is what we experience in the void phase, is that frustrated feeling inside when we feel like nothing's really working. And this is the third sign, I suppose, is that we've done lots of yogic work, lots of sadhana. If you have never heard of that term before, sadhana just means daily spiritual practice to bring about the highest aliveness. It's your practices to bring out the highest intensity of energy in the system. And this is great because we can use that energy for spiritual growth. And should you wish, down below there's a free breathing practice that you're more than welcome to sign up for. It will introduce you to an idea called dynamic stillness, and it will increase the energy levels a little bit. It won't take you all the way, but it's a really good start. And then from there, should you wish, there's the one-to-one coaching down below, which you can find the application for. It's free to apply. The coaching isn't free, but I'll make sure that I will definitely check your application form out to see if we're a good match. There's also a free Facebook community down below, and that will always be free. You do have to have a Facebook account though to sign up, which I find most people in the spiritual community are a bit averse to having, and that's okay. I am trying to find a way to make it online, but not linked to a social media account. So back to the video 3. You've done lots of spiritual work, sadhana, and you almost feel like all of that was in vain. It's like we have great growth moments, don't we, where we feel alive, and then the next moment we're plunged into a void, and it's almost like a pulse, isn't it? We expand and we contract and we expand and we contract in this existence, but when we're expanded it feels lovely and it feels like we're doing the right things, and when we contracted it feels like, oh God, what have I made it all up? Am I even going through this journey? Is it real? And that's understandable, you know. But the thing is that we learn in time is that those contracted moments are just as valuable as the expanded moments, because a contracted moment, like a spring, is just an expanded moment waiting to happen, because as soon as you let go of that spring, boing, there it goes, like this. So these void phases are definitely worthwhile. They're definitely necessary. Otherwise we don't tend to search for the more that we're seeking. So I go back to the point of often being in frustration. This can lead to sort of depression and sort of more darkness inside, isn't it? And this is the fourth sign, really, that we're going through one of these phases, is that we find ourselves a little bit detached in ourselves. We know that we're the witness in this journey, but we sort of detach and become really insular, and this can lead to almost like apathy, hopelessness, isn't it? And Lord knows I've experienced this many times, and I will experience it many more. And this is just something that we have to get used to. Life is changing so fast for us, isn't it, that we don't quite recognize at the start the patterns in this awakening journey, and it takes just a little bit time for us to bed in and recognize the patterns. Oh, there's a pattern to this flows quite nicely, this is just another pulse that I'm going through, and it has value, because the fifth sign of the void, to know that you're in the void phase, or a void phase, because we don't just have one, they sort of come in waves, is that we crave that deeper connection. What is it that we're craving that deeper connection to? Well, that is that God center, that source of energy inside of ourselves. That's that connection that we crave. We can crave the connection to the outward world too. Not that it's really outward, because everything is the self. But it's that connection to divinity within us that we crave. Why? Well, because it feels good. Two, because it's our nature to crave that. It's our nature to feel good. And of course that comes with some misalignment, some contracted phases too, but that's part of the journey. Without this, we don't crave this, and without this, we don't have the inspiration to continue. So we must contract, we must expand emotionally, mentally, physically, and that's why we do the yoga, so that we become flexible on all levels in this existence. It seems to be that these void stages are there to create that deeper sense of separation from that connectedness. So we disconnect a bit, but it's happening intelligently. We disconnect so that we then crave that beauty, that wonder inside. It's almost like a catalyst or a deadline, not really a deadline, but like a deadline from your inner guidance system. It's like, well, then you must search. Problem's been created, void stage, then we must search for the answers and our way out. And that's what leads to a more authentic journey. At least I know this in me. I know it. One of my issues is not being honest with myself, you know, and so that's where my most recent void is coming from. It's like, well, how can I be more honest with myself? How can I serve in a more authentic way for me? And that's what creates that deeper search and a more authentic journey moving forward. But again, we'll pulse, and it won't be the end, and we'll keep pulsing and keep pulsing and keep pulsing. So here's to that. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Have a lovely day. Namaste.